Welcome back. A very warm welcome again to everyone. I hope you had an opportunity to catch tea and snacks. We are at a time for another very, very interesting panel discussion, a discussion around post-COVID foundational learning, including research policy and related evidence in the area. The panel will be chaired by Terry Durnnian, Chief Education, United Nations Children's Fund. Terry, can you come in, please, on the stage, please? Thank you. And he'll be joined with Mr. Shailendra Sharma, Special Advisor to Government of Delhi, Mr. Rishikesh, Lead for Hub for Education, Law and Policy, Azim Premji University, Shobhini Mukerji, Executive Director, JPAL South Asia, and Dr. Joseph Emmanuel Director, Academics, Joint Secretary, CBSE, with us today. Can we have everyone on stage, please? Thank you. Terry, over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry to say, I think I've a hard act to follow from the last panel discussion and the moderating by Lukmini. So I'll have to try my best here. Really, we're looking at, in this discussion, sort of the impacts of COVID on learning and what some of the responses have been across the sector from different perspectives. And really, what is some of the evidence that's come out and how is it being used? And really looking at how it's being used in terms of policy and planning moving forward. And that's really the focus, what we're looking at right now. I'll have to make a disclaimer and apologize for our gender balance up front here. And so I'll first sort of set the scene and ask Dr. Emmanuel to sort of share with us your experience in terms of the impacts of COVID on learning and from your work at CBSE. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening to you all. COVID has thrown a big challenge on the society and the whole universe. It has shown us our limitation, but at the same time, COVID has shown us a lot of opportunities, particularly for promotion of education. If we take the example of CBSE, CBSE schools are almost coming from the private sector schools. COVID has comparatively less impact on the studies of children of CBSE affiliated school because of the economic, socio-economic factors. We have conducted 3 surveys among the CBSE affiliated schools, and it was revealed that more than 80% students were connected and they were given good education, even in the verge of COVID, through the online mode. So technology was used very extensively to promote education, and a lot of experiential learning had happened during COVID time. But there are students from economically poor strata of the society. They were completely disconnected with the education during the COVID time. But the biggest advantage of COVID was there was a realization among the educationists and the policymakers that lot of scope for experiential learning is there in the education system, and that can happen by giving free hand to the teachers and students. We all of us realize that our present system is almost prescriptive. We prescribe everything, and we will force the system and the students particularly to follow a set pattern. So there is very less scope for their individual thinking. During COVID time, many children came up with innovative ideas. Many schools shared with us. Even many children used culinary art as an alternative for laboratory work. So all such, experiential learning had happened during COVID time. And it has also shown us the importance of reaching out to every child and helping the child according to the need of the child. In a big classroom, in the normal situation, every child is taught in a particular fashion. Teacher will come, explain, go, and there is less scope for interaction with the children. So it's very important to have more and more interaction with the children, to understand their individuality, their requirement, and also to handhold them to understand their aspiration in life, their potential, their skill set, abilities, competencies, and other aspects. Here we had an example, beautiful example of Chandigarh. Madam Rukmini is here. So during COVID time, we have been working together for promoting, the competency-based learning in Chandigarh schools. We have organized many ground-level programs for the students and parents. And to our surprise, in most of the programs, parents of students belonging to lower strata was very active in participating in such programs and taking advice and inputs for supporting their students. It was an overwhelming response from the side of government school children and government school parents. As a result, if you go through the result of NAS 2021, there is visible improvement in the performance of Chandigarh. So it's very important to be connected with the students, to be available to the students, to give individual attentions to the students and handhold them. So COVID in general has revealed the importance of being connected with the children and understanding the children and promoting their individual requirements. So along with the technological advancement, the traditional way of connecting with the students and understanding the students' requirement and giving them emotional support is very, very important. These are the two key learnings during COVID time. And in the years to come, we need to focus on experiential learning and understanding and assessing children in terms of their skill set and abilities. So our present assessment pattern should completely changed, and we should bring competency-based assessment of students to understand their skill set and abilities. So question framing and using assessment as learning and assessment for learning in the classroom all are very important. So even while teaching learning happens, the teacher should be capable of assessing the child to reach out to them and provide them necessary support. So in the COVID situation, wherever technology was available and wherever parents could afford technology, their learning gap was or learning loss was minimal. But wherever parents' financial condition was poor or they were not supported with adequate resources, learning gap is still there. So to fill that learning gap, extra effort is required from the side of educators, policymakers, as well as parents, so that all the stakeholders should come together and support the children to help them to realize their dreams in life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's very interesting looking at, because I think a lot of discussions around COVID about technology replacing teachers, and it really, from your example, how it reinforces the importance of the role of teachers, facilitators and supporters for learning. Thank you. Now, sir, shifting sort of to the university's Rishikesh, in terms of some of the evidence generations your university has done during COVID, and what's that telling us about some of the challenges children had in their learning and learning levels?
Yeah, sure, Terry. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's not just about the study that we've done. I think since morning we've been speaking of many studies, and we are here at the JEEP conference itself. So from the JEEP study, from Pratham's answer, even during COVID, I think Karnataka and Chhattisgarh, you were able to do, we've had NAS, right, and including ours. One thing, if there is consensus, I think across the 2 years from studies around the world, it's that there has been a learning loss And I think, as Yamini in the morning was saying, we need to do some plain speaking and acknowledge that the loss is quite dramatic. And there could be some instances where we seem to see some improvements, such as Chhattisgarh, as Dr. Joseph was talking about, but then we need to figure out as to what really has happened there. Because otherwise, from across the world, what's coming out is that even if you have just a couple of months of closure, there has been a loss. Now, this loss is not just about children not being able to go to school during that point of time, but also children forgetting. In fact, the very concept of summer loss is because of the summer vacations. And now we've had 2 years in our country, children having not gone to school. So what we've seen, and what all studies have pretty much seen, is that children have not only not able to gain those competencies for those 2 years, but whatever they had 2 years ago have also been lost, right? Obviously, when we talk of learning loss, one do recognizes that children have picked up very many other things, such as through the experiential learning, some other skill sets. But then what was formerly supposed to be learned in school has not happened, and what they had learned has been lost. And what is unfortunate, and what is it that we found in our study, is what they have lost are some foundational skills. So when we say foundational skills, we are talking about those attributes without which you can't go further, right? So that's really what we've been able to find out. In fact, our study, which was done in January 21, so it's been more than a year now, was focusing on specific foundational abilities. We looked at 4 specific abilities in language and 4 in mathematics across grades 2 and 6. And what we found was, in fact, a surprise even to us, because we did recognize, being on the field, that there was dramatic loss of learning. But we found that nearly 92% of children had lost at least one of those foundational abilities in language, and the number was about 82% in mathematics. And what are we talking of when we say foundational attributes? Simple things such as looking at a picture and being able to explain orally what it means. Just reading a simple sentence. Mathematic operations. In fact, for grade 2 and grade 3, it was just about reading 2-digit numbers. So now, when you don't have those foundational attributes, there's just no point in going ahead. I think in the morning panel also, we spoke of that, and Rukmini spoke of the page number 8 in the policy, saying there's no point of talking of anything else if we don't build those foundational attributes. And again, the other point is that our foundations were already weak. Pratham, year after year for 15 years, has said that. Many studies have said that. Now that weak foundation has got weaker. Now the danger is we are not going to see the huge impact that this is going to have next year or the year after that, or even 3 years down the line. This is going to hit us, a decade later. Even currently, we are at grade 12 having only 60% of our students clearing school, right? So SDG goal, number 4 is about 100% at grade 12, and we are already 40% short. Now, going by what we are looking on the ground, if we don't consider it as a crisis or as an emergency, our worry is that these numbers are going to really increase tremendously, and then we will not be able to do anything. So it's very important for occasions such as this here that we recognize this very crucial point that we have to do something. Yes, I mean, there are modes that can be used. In the morning, we had the Joint Secretary from MOE speak about all the digital resources that are there. There are many departments of school education which have done a lot. All those have to be used, but then they will have to be used in such a way that we are able to recover in the next 1 or maximum 2 years. And for that, there has to be a lot of planning, a lot of changes in terms of the curriculum and in terms of the pedagogic approach. So which also brings us to how do you then get the teachers to think in this way. Though I think that's the easiest of the challenges. We were in a breakout room looking at teacher support for learning recovery, and pretty much everyone there, be it a policymaker or a teacher, all acknowledge that teachers are the first ones to recognize this. Now, the challenge really is how do we allow these teachers now to take on that challenge and address it in a manner that we are not going to land into a problem a few years down the line. I would like to end with another small little study that I did. The Azim Premji Foundation study looked at grades 2 to 6. We wanted to find out what's happened in the higher grades, because higher grades were the ones which had a few more number of days during these 2 years wherein they could go to school. So I did this very small little experiment in grade 8 in Bangalore. It was supposed to be a school with a lot of resources, akin to the Delhi government school, Karnataka government school, and went in there into grade 8 with 15 questions of grade 6 in mathematics, and got the students to do it and post that. I asked the students as to how have they done. All of them very excited. They said that they have all completed the paper, and out of a group of 40, almost 24 of them raised their hand saying that they got all the questions right. When we did an analysis, 2 of them had got 12 out of the 15 questions right. And then it went down. So now, across all our grades, we have that spectrum. Yes, there are children who are at grade level, some maybe even above grade level in terms of the learning capabilities, but then the spread is so wide now that the challenge is far greater than what the teachers were facing earlier. In fact, that's the reason why we have, in fact, a loose network of educationists. We call ourselves the National Coalition for Education Emergency, who are bringing in a lot of inputs from different places that they work in. For instance, Jean Reyes from Ranchi is bringing us reports of how dire the situation is there. We have Sri Ranjani and Ramanujam from the Tamil Nadu Science Forum, talking about similar things all the way even in Tamil Nadu. We have Gurumurthy Kashinathan, IT for Change, bringing in reports from Karnataka. In fact, we have Sajita Bashir, who was giving us inputs from around the world, an ex-World Bank employee, who is also giving us reports from Kerala. So what this Education Emergency Coalition is giving is reports to all of us as to how dire the situation is across the country. And which is what we are now trying to use to impress upon the governments that we work with, to say that if we don't do anything immediately, it is going to be disastrous. And thankfully, a lot of state governments have woken up to this reality. I think in the morning we heard that as well. Joint Secretary also acknowledged that. But the time is now to actually start using all the recommendations and the reports. All that is out there, I feel. And so yes, I mean, we all have to get together to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and really presenting sort of the depth of the challenge in front of us, and looking at how learning's been impacted, but really looking at the different levels within that. Even you're talking about the older students, and I think the spectrum of where children or students are is really shifted. And it really links into sort of Shobhini asking about sort of the research and the evidence coming that you've advocated in terms of JPAL's work over the last couple of years in terms of the importance of starting learning where children are at and the importance of that. So I'll hand it over to you.
I think we always knew what the problem was, and I mean I agree with my co-panelists that this issue existed even much before the pandemic. It's just gotten even worse in the last 2 years. So we have been working on a bunch of different studies looking at learning across the last 15 years now, I believe. And I think what we've seen are I will emphasize that. So the basis of using evidence to inform decisions, I think that's really the heart of what I'm going to talk about for the next couple of minutes. And we found very startling, interesting results that go against our gut. Now I think I'm speaking to a very converted audience, so what I say might not surprise anyone. But we've had decades of governments and organizations putting in resources into schools, into teaching. But I think what we found is that you have to go beyond the necessary inputs of teachers, of textbooks, school meals, buildings, all of that. You have to go beyond that to look at pedagogy, look at the teaching and learning that's happening inside the classrooms. And what we found through, now I think there's been about over 200 plus evaluations, randomized evaluations that the Poverty Action Lab has done across the world. And a significant number of them have been in the space of early childhood and sort of primary education, and we found that inputs alone are not sufficient. They're necessary but not sufficient to move the needle on learning outcomes. You do need some tailored instruction. You do need to group. Kids are, you are seeing this as panelists are saying, that kids were always at different levels of learning. You need to be able to sort of tailor instruction to the level at which the child is for certain periods of time a day. We've seen successes in the delivery of that through different models. Now, there have been many experiments that have been done in India, in the US, Chile, Kenya, Ghana. I can't now recount all the different countries where we've seen this, is tailoring instruction and grouping by the level of the child. Now, in India, we've had more than 6 or 7 randomized evaluations across 7 Indian states, where we've worked with Pratham to do these evaluations. We evaluated their flagship programs rather. And we found that grouping kids by for a specific period of time a day, by the ability level, whether it's in maths and language, it really helps build foundational skills in a very short period of time. We've seen results go from, I think now I'll talk in standard deviation change, from anything from 0.07 to 0.70, which is very high in education if you look at it. So this is one, I would say, in terms of thinking through what works, what doesn't. We firmly believe that this is something that we really need to advocate, in countries after country, state after state in India. Keeping the curriculum aside, it's also, there are some elements in terms of when do we action this. This is the right time to action this. It surprises all of us that we have been talking about this for so long, but I feel that there's not enough thought that's going into. A lot of thought is going into reorganizing the curriculum, but the curriculum is not even at, it's some aspirational level. The child not in the classroom is not able to even grasp that what's that happening. So foundational learning is so key right now. We've got a successful model. There are many iterations. There are many delivery models now. So what we found across many different iterations over the last 15 years, whether you do it within classrooms or outside classrooms, whether you do it in the community, under a tree, whether you do it with a volunteer, whether you do it with an NGO partner, whether you do it with government school teachers, it works. There are certain, I would say there are many ways, many models. We just need to now sort of start with this. There is also an aspect of technology. We've seen in the past that even if you have, again, technology is not a silver bullet, I will admit that. We've got mixed results in terms of, technology in itself, it does just access to technology and using technology is not going to move needle on learning levels. But once if it's integrated into the experience of the child, I feel that we've seen that does have an impact. We've recently evaluated some work in the Delhi government in Delhi schools with education initiatives, and they have this adaptive curriculum which is called MindSpark. We have seen. And again, it's with middle graders, tailored by instruction, a certain period of time. It's progressive levels, and kids are being able to sort of move to the next level. And we've seen impacts in there. Of course, now how do we expand that? How do we work within the governments to be able to do that? There's challenges across the whole lot of challenges. So, but by itself, I think we've seen that to work. We've talking about foundational in middle grades. You just talked about that. We've now got early evidence from Orissa, where we've seen that this grouping by ability for a certain period of time a day for language and math builds foundational skills even for middle graders. So that's early evidence. We have to see how, and teachers were reassessing children and putting them in different groups. And these are middle grades I'm talking about. So it does work. And it's just, I fail to understand why this is not something that government after government, state after state is not taking up and saying, let's spend the next 3 months just doing this. Whereas we're back in school. Kids are now, I'm looking at my daughter's in class 4, and she cannot do class 4 curriculum. I am doing class 3 curriculum with her at home, and the school is doing class 4 curriculum with her in the school. And we're elite private school in India, in Delhi. So if this is happening in my house, I am very worried about what's happening in the rest of the schools in India.
Thank you very much. It's really important to serve more in depth to serve the evidence that's out there, but also looking at how you can take the evidence or looking at the practice to address sort of the issues around that's come out, or even before the pandemic going forward. So looking at that, looking at the experience in Delhi government, because often you look at, what's also important is how you present this data and then its use. So what is the experience in Delhi in terms of the evidence from the study or from other sources, and sort of how you're integrating or using it in terms of the practice?
In the previous panel, Rukmini asked the panelist that if they want one piece of research to be conducted, what is it that they would want? And since I did not have that advantage to answer, then I'll answer now. I'll ask Rachel. Probably you can design one study to establish to what extent evidence has been able to, what are the evidence available to establish whether evidence indeed lead to any action or outcome. And the reason okay. So I'll get you, so I'll give you an example to illustrate that. In 2016, when the new government came to power in Delhi, it asked all its teachers in the government school to do a baseline assessment of children in grade 6. And grade 6, because children transition from primary to upper primary then, and there is a different kind of a school setup, different kind of approach has to be followed. So they just wanted to understand at what level of reading and numeracy children are. Teachers themselves did this assessment, and they found that 76% children in grade 6 could not read a simple paragraph from their own textbook. Now, what more evidence would you require? And prior to that, from 2005 onwards, every year ASR has been telling what the basic foundational level of children are. What more evidence would you require then? But in 2016, when Delhi government we did this, it did not immediately lead into the acceptance that here is an evidence and we need to act upon. Because evidence, in my understanding over the last few years, it means different things to different people. For a teacher, this would mean a very different thing. Now, we have heard, Shobhini also quoted the example of her daughter. And in the previous session, Yamini was telling about her own experience. Now, these are two young mothers. On the basis of one child each, they have their own experience to share. Now, imagine a teacher who has been with children for year after year. What is her experience and what kind of evidence she is looking at it? So I think more than the evidence, it is the belief and practice which has shaped what is going to change and what is going to remain constant in what happens inside the schools. So belief and practice has been driving it. And therefore, what we realized after in 2016, Government of Delhi designed a program to improve foundational learning. On the basis of the feedback that we were receiving from the teachers, there are several teachers of that cohort. They are here in the room also. They would be able to better tell the kind of discussion or the debate we used to have. Oh, education is not only about reading. Oh, reading is not only about coding and decoding. So we have had multiple rounds of discussions around those. It did not immediately lead into acceptance by the teachers, though there was a program of the government, but it did not immediately lead to the acceptance to put your whole heart and soul into actually changing the situation, because there would be debate, okay, so what happens to the children who are above foundational level? What should we do with them? And also trying to pin the blame on mostly children or their parents also. We as education system, we as teachers are doing what we can. And if some children are not learning, then it got to be problem at their end, not at our end. So that was the kind of response we would get. Fast forward. So we launched a program called Chunauti. We modified it to called Mission Bunyad, where again, as in the previous discussion somebody said, governments acts more in mission mode rather than into a program kind of a thing. So we also launched our own mission in 2018. But the issues by and large remained same. There was far more acceptance among certain community of teachers who have been seeing repeatedly what is happening. But I would not say that it was like a complete acceptance. Then fast forward comes pandemic. And one realization that started sinking among the whole setup was that this is going to last long. So what we have been doing for ages, it is not going to work. We have to find different ways of reaching children, connecting with them. So all kinds of, so for the first time, I mean, I realized that the discussion shifted from input to process. Otherwise, more often, and we hear, even now, if you talk to the government, they will list down the laundry thing, that here are, we have done this, we have done this, we have done this, we have included one more curriculum, we are doing this. But nobody actually sees how it is panning out in the field. Nobody actually works with the teacher to understand where the bottleneck is arising and how to overcome that. But in the pandemic, this realization sunk, okay, if we have designed something, is it reaching our children? So for instance, in Delhi government itself, when we started, first we were sending WhatsApp messages to children. And then we realized, okay, but what if WhatsApp message, child cannot read, parent would not be able to read, what should we do next? We've shifted to IVR. Then many teachers started learning to get on to Zoom. So lot of iteration started happening on how to reach, how to connect. This how has always been missing in the class. So that started happening. But what it establishes is that we have to do something, and the belief of the systems largely that if children have not learned, if children cannot do the foundational stuff, it's got to be them. This blame actually, thanks to COVID, it shifted to COVID itself. It's not, and there was this realization also if children are coming, 1 year is gone, second year is going, so then children are actually missing out. There's a huge learning loss that is happening. They did not need any further evidence for that. So it was like for the first time that their own belief and the evidence were converging. So as a result, what happened when the school reopened, and in Delhi we relaunched Mission Bunyad, we found far more acceptance of that than at any point in time in previous history. Not a single teacher that we come across, and we have had extensive network of talking to them, would come and say that this is not required or some other debate will follow. Everybody was convinced, okay, children are coming after 2 years, then they must have forgotten how to even read and write. Let's focus on that. We found massive acceptance among parents also. We held the first parents-teacher meet, we call Mega PTM, because on a particular one day we invite all the parents. And we had close to 75% parents actually turning up, which had never happened. And then the right from the day one, the message was very clear by way of official circulars and orders that syllabus is not to be touched. You have to use your time, so 1 hour for numeracy, 1 hour for literacy, 1 hour for social emotional practice. We have had happiness curriculum going on, so those practices will be used. And the children who can read. We have like a good setup of library books in the schools. They should be encouraged to read, they should be encouraged to write. Don't touch the book. So repeatedly this message was going on. And also both ministers and director repeatedly, regularly visiting school and actually sitting with children and showing them the book. Let's try. Can you read that? So all these gestures also further convince that everybody is aligned. There is no two definition of what needs to be done in this point of time. So therefore we got a very good response on that. And I would say that in the first 3 months, starting from April and going on till mid-June, we have had close to 85 to 90% children actually attending in school, which was a was a bit, and we can say that because we managed to record their learning levels, so they have at least turned up. When we did summer camp in the month of May and June, because usually it's a summer vacation, we said that we'll let go of summer vacation, we'll have summer camp. And in summer camp, we have had like nearly 65% attendance of children. On the previous occasions, pre-pandemic period, whenever we would have summer camp, the attendance would never exceed beyond 50-55%. It was 65% this time. And last piece I would want to share on this is that why I said in the beginning that evidence means different things to different people. When schools reopened briefly in somewhere around December and January, I remember going to school first day, first show, excitement. So I went to the school. It was a grade 5 class. I entered. 14 children was sitting in the class. And the teacher on the blackboard, it was first day of the class. She had drawn something on the blackboard and she was teaching area and perimeter to children. And I went and I sat at the back of the class. 14 children were there. I started. I wrote 27 minus 17. And I asked the child sitting next to me, can you just do that? This child was struggling. Then I moved us further. And from behind till front, I reached, and only 2 children could manage to do that. And I asked teacher, you've started with area and perimeter on the first day. Most of the children, did you even know where those children are? And she said, but sir, they are coming after 1.5 years. There's a massive learning loss that has happened. I have to catch up. And if I don't do this, then how will we catch up? So that was like an alarm bell, and thanks, Yamini will hate me for saying that immediately the school again shut down because another wave was around the corner. And that got us an opportunity to huddle back, sit together, work out, and we used that time to organize repeated sessions with teachers. And we went step by step as to what process, what method you are going to follow. Because saying this children cannot read, or we must focus on foundational learning, or X percentage of children cannot, is not enough. If we have to change the practice, then have to have a counter practice also. When a child is in front of you for the next 40 minutes, what exactly are you going to do? What are the steps that you follow? We had like a partnership with Pratham. So we organized repeated training. We created a cadre of people who would go again and again because the schools were not opening, but teachers were coming. So we would organize those sessions. So as a result, when finally school opened in April, the teachers were both mentally prepared to do that, as well as strategically also prepared to do. And the next 2.5 months has shown a lot of encouraging sign, and we are building upon that. We have said that from July onwards also, we will follow the same thing. So that to me is evidence, belief, and practice combined.
Thank you. It's amazing. Again, really links back to what Dr. Emmanuel said, talk about the opportunities and really take advantage maybe of a bad situation. What can you do? And I think one of my takeaways is the thing around acceptance and belief. It's not just enough to have the evidence. It's a certain amount of acceptance and belief that it's true, and what do you do with it? And this question of how. Looking at foundational numeracy, it's not just enough to just say, do it, but how do you do it? What is the concreteness of it? Next, an example. Coming back to sort of your work in Connecticut, in terms of how you're trying to influence policy and planning there around the same way, using evidence to improve practice in the classroom.
Yeah, so as we so far said, so there is evidence all around. Now it's about, and also there is acknowledgement. And there are best practice. You just have to look up to what Delhi is doing. So in that sense, everything is there in place. So now a challenge is how do we get people to act upon it? And I think in the morning we had Saurav who spoke about how it's very difficult to get a government to say that, well, we are not going to do the the syllabus for this year, but we are going to do something very basic. There are repercussions for that. So governments are not going to easily agree to it, right? So the challenge really when we work with governments is how do we get them to understand that if you don't take that difficult decision, things are going to get more and more difficult. But for that, you need a convergence. So for instance, in Karnataka, and I'm sure in many other states which also have started moving in the direction, we were able to get the acceptance on the criticality of action on the evidence that exists from the minister, the principal secretary, the commissioner, and the SPD. The four top decision makers, and once there is acceptance there at that top level, then it's about trying to work out the nitty-gritties and how the detailing should be. Again, now this is something that we've realized can't really be planned. It's just about continuously talking about this evidence and the necessity to act, and using every single opportunity. In fact, I remember in Karnataka, it was a meeting on implementation of NEP, which turned out finally into this learning recovery curriculum for the coming year. Because as the discussion went on, we spoke of how this is an opportunity for us to actually implement NEP, but not necessarily provision 1, 2, 3, but then reconfiguring the curriculum to focus on the foundational aspects. So what's happened in Karnataka is this entire year's curriculum has been reconfigured, wherein foundational attributes are going to be the ones that teachers are going to engage the children with for the first few months, and then they're going to slowly build up on that to come to the current syllabus, this year's syllabus, only by the end of this year. So which would then mean that you only have still, even by law it's about 220 days, but we all know that 180 to 200 days is what a school gets, a government school. So how do you ensure that you are still able to reach up to the grade level, given that your time is the same? So that is where really you again go back to NEP and say, I'm going to look at the core competencies and pick out from the curriculum the core competencies at each grade and rework the entire thing. Now this requires a lot of work, and so Karnataka's example was that there was 3 months of I'm not speaking lightly when I say day and night work in reconfiguring, involving all the teacher educators from the various diets. So almost about 12 diets were provided with the resources and the task to come out with a reconfigured curriculum, and it took them about 3 months to identify the core competencies. It had to be worked out in such a way that you pick the competency that a child is expected to learn in grade 9, and then you work almost 4 grades behind to see as to what was the foundational attribute for that. So for instance, I can give you an example from science. In grade 8, there is food production in the Karnataka syllabus. Now for that, you go back about 3 grades before. So in the previous grade, you go into nutrients and other aspects which lead to plants and their growth. And then before that, you go into a more simpler and basic thing of 4 sources of food. And so this way you work backwards, and you ensure that when you are identifying the core competencies, there is this linkage from the lowest class, from the foundational attribute to the class that you are or to the grade that you are coming to. So this work required a lot of effort from everybody in the department, and that is what we were able to see in Karnataka. And hence currently when the year has begun now, there's a reconfigured curriculum. But of course challenges are there. For instance, one of the challenge was financing something like this. I mean, it required teacher handbooks, it required workbooks, it required teacher orientation. So almost 100 crore bill is what state government was expected. And during these times when there is financial crunch on pretty much everything, they had to take the money out. But then from various whatever options that they had, but they did it because they had made the commitment, and after that they had to go with it. So that was done, but then some of the challenges do exist. For instance, currently as we speak, a lot of this material which was supposed to be in the schools about a month ago has still not reached. Some schools have it, some schools don't. Again, you can't really blame anyone. There are these processes. So tendering is a process that they all go by. So then you are at the mercy of the printers. So all this is happening. But because there is convergence and everyone has publicly kind of taken an oath pretty much on this, everyone's trying to do the best so that this is what's going to be in the coming year. So that's been the experience in Karnataka. The thing is that you need to continuously work at it. The plan is in place. It's almost on a rollout. But if you now step back, if anyone, I mean, be it the secretary or anyone else, including the non-government actors, if we step back, the chances are that things are going to fall apart. Though the other thing which I think Shailendra ji also was saying, the teachers know that this is what ought to be done. So there is a complete buy-in on this learning recovery program from the teachers in Karnataka. Now the only thing is that they, one, needs to have all the administrative officers backing off to not go there and say complete the syllabus or do the textbooks. And two, they need this material. Which is again things that has been spoken of in the orientation. So that's where we are in Karnataka.
Thank you. And I was just there visiting schools just last week and seeing. I mean, not that I understand what was happening, but for me as a teacher, looking at the expression on the teacher's face and the student's face and seeing the engagement and the passion and the interaction, it was amazing. And the commitment. And I think really allowing teachers to be teachers is so critical. And not burdening them with administration, taking them off task. But again, this thing about acceptance, belief, and practice. So coming back to Dr. Emmanuel, as a senior person in the government, what recommendation or suggestion would you make to people in their engagement to help government to see evidence and the acceptance of evidence more readily? I'm thinking even, I was mentioning earlier about NAS, for example, is being released. A lot of times it's abstract. How could practitioners or organizations work to empower government or to accept and see the issues around, believe in it, and looking at changing practice?
From the words of Shailendra ji and Rishikesh, I can also endorse their view. Evidences are already available. Only thing is we need to focus on various areas and bring action to resolve the issues and problems. For researchers and implementers and the policy makers, it's always required to have continuous dialogue to understand each other's perception as well as requirements. And when research happens, research should be independent and evidence-oriented and reliable. That is very important. And when research happens, it's also important what are the requirements, what are the points looked upon by the policymakers and implementers. And the research should also support them in framing their actions. So all are interconnected, and continuous dialogue, continuous exchange of ideas, and bring a shared vision. All are important for the effective implementation of policies and framing of policies. For example, in CBSE, we have been working to promote competency-based education. So when India has decided to participate in PISA, we were looking for various reasons why we could not perform well in 2009 PISA. So we have first conducted a dipstick study in Chandigarh because Chandigarh was our sample. Then the same evidence came before us. The children of class 8 or 9, because PISA is for 15-year-old, they could not even read and complete the questions. Forget about the scientific literacy and mathematical literacy. So reading literacy is the primary skill that leads to other acquiring of other competencies and skill set. So we need to completely refocus on skilling of our students. So evidences are there. Now what level of intervention is required, that kind of study will further help. So time has come, we need to act upon. We need to implement the policies and programs on ground. When we started working with Pratham for promoting the learning level of students in Chandigarh, initially there were resistance from teachers. Both Pratham and Sri Aurobindo Society worked along with the CBSE for promoting the learning level of students in Chandigarh, being the PISA population. So gradually we could convince the teachers, and teachers' confidence were gained. Initially, the teachers were also apprehensive that these kind of interventions does not make, it is going to make any change. हम लोग शुरू में जब गया तो ऐसा कितना लोग आया इधर, कितना भाषण सुना, तो कुछ भी नहीं होगा. But gradually we could gain support from the teachers, and there are certain genuine problems from the side of the teachers, particularly regarding the big classroom size in our schools. So teachers will not be able to give individual attention. They need support to understand the learning level of child as well as to provide them solutions. So teacher support is also equally important, and there needs to be policy at institutional level, at state level, country level. All kind of evidences are required. And another area of research that is required is for framing of assessment policies. We have large data, but this data should be used to analyze the level of understanding, level of skill set and competencies of students. So in the new national education policy, there is a recommendation for establishing PARAC. So that's a country level intervention. In CBSE, we have initiated implementing Center for Assessment, and we are also working with the different partner organizations. So continuous dialogue to understand the requirements of the state as well as institution, and the willingness to partner with for implementing these aspirations and plans of the government as well as the institutions, all are very, very important. So when we assess our children in the present way, we simply ask questions at the end of the chapter and expect children to completely omit everything what they learned in the classroom. That kind of assessment is currently happening. So even in our best schools, the teachers are not trained to create creative questions or the application oriented questions. So that thinking skill needs to be created, that hand-holding should happen from the teachers training institutions, higher educational institutions. So we need to develop a generation of teachers who are able to think and act. So that will not happen all of a sudden. It will take some time to create competent teachers, to implement various policies and programs, even to understand the requirements of every student. There needs to be certain skill set and competencies required with every teacher. So that kind of an empathetic approach and a result-oriented approach, and that kind of an orientation needs to be given to the teachers for making this ground level transformation. First of all, there should be a realization of change in everybody's mind. So for making a small change in the society, there needs to be a big change in the minds of the people. That mindset change we need to bring first. So the policy makers, implementers, and the researchers, the non-governmental organization, everybody should work together, come together, understand the larger, broader requirement, understand the importance of education as well as quality education. The NEP is 4 pillars: equity, excellence, access, as well as inclusiveness. all are very equally important. So SDG goals also aiming for that. So quality education is the right of every citizen of this country and every child in this world. So foundational years are also more important because that are the years when a person or the child learn to learn. So that learn to learn will begin from foundational years. So that will set in what direction he will be growing and how he is going to be a good contributor to the society. So learning to learn, that skill needs to be built in foundational years. So focus needs to be given for promoting foundational learning skill set abilities at age appropriate level. And also this assessment should happen at classroom level, at a small group level instead of very large scale. Large scale evidence will give support to corroborate with the actions which is taken at a broad level or a large scale. But at the grassroots level, institutional level, assessment should be used by every educator and even the parents. Unfortunately, our parents' skill set are also needs to be improved. It will take time because in a country like India, with a lot of diversity and economical imbalance, so it will also a time-taking process. But that are the area where we need to focus to build the foundational year competencies. So through a collective effort, realization of requirements and partnering with the multiple organizations and institutions, non-governmental organizations, or every citizen of this country, for that matter. When I was a child in our state, Kerala, this national literacy mission, that was happening. So as an volunteer, I was a graduate student at that time. At my home, there were very few people. Even then, we were determined to educate them, at least teach them foundational literacy and numeracy. They were, we can't say they were not educated. They have very good ideas. They have lot of life skills, abilities. Even we were able to learn so many things from them, but they were not able to read and write. So those mass level movement, mass level participation of society is required to bring transformation in the whole country. So let us work together. Let us think openly without any prejudice. And let us realize the requirement of giving education, quality education to every child. That is the fundamental right of every child that has been enacted by law also. But practically it is not happening. So let us work together, let us understand the requirement of education and do our level best for giving primary education and all, and to the next level, quality education and higher order thinking skills, competencies, all those aspects we need to look into, so that there is a complete transformation is required in the teaching learning that is happening in the classrooms, the assessment that is happening in the classroom. And for realizing that goals, we need to build the capacity of the teachers, and also systemic reforms are required. So, there is, it's not an easy task, it's a tough task, but I am hopeful it is a realizable goal if everybody put their effort together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important to highlight in terms of it's really working together. The change that we're discussing and the challenges, it's a journey. And really, if we work together and have that discussion and dialogue, that's so important, that journey and that process going forward. So I'm coming back to Shobhini. You can respond to the question, but also I call it the cat chasing the tail, but also looking at recommendations in terms of how really scaling up evidence into policy.
So Terry, I'll talk in two aspects. So one is working. Okay, so I'll talk. There are two aspects that I will talk about. One is yes, there is evidence. You can hear me. Fantastic. So one is at really the micro level, and then there's a macro, the bigger piece. So the bigger piece will answer your question, Shailendra. But I think let me start from the more interesting micro piece of using evidence to scale. I think there are some important lessons that we've learned along the way. So I will underscore the importance of strong partnerships. I think Dr. Emmanuel mentioned that as well. You need really strong partnerships between the policymakers, implementers, researchers, donors to come together to create and support good, rigorous evidence to create the right, to understand what works, what doesn't work. You want to be putting in sort of money towards resources that are more likely to work and sort of scale down what you don't think is going to work. So you really need strong partnerships. But here are a few lessons, I think, at a really micro level that we've learned in all of these years. And I'm talking from an evaluation perspective. And I'm sure, we have implementers in the room, we have governments in the room. They'll obviously have their, a lot more to say than I will. 3 or 4 things that we've learned. Firstly, I think it's very important to get the timing right of whatever you are implementing and scaling. Testing, implementing, scaling in government schools, for instance, especially with respect to such innovative programs. If you take the example of teaching at the right level, which is what I talked about earlier, the foundational, how do you use that to build foundational skills among children in a short period of time. Rishikesh talked about all of the various challenges. You need to get the timing right in terms of catching children early at the beginning of the school year, rather than 6 months into where they've sort of lost 6 months staring at a blackboard. Perimeter is happening, but you can't do simple subtraction. I think more importantly now, how do you get the timing right? What we've seen in many of these evaluations, some of them were successful, some we found actually we had to abandon because we weren't able to implement, the government wasn't able to implement together with the implementing partners because the funds didn't come on time. Now the funds, it's not alone, the funds come through SSA, it has to come to the state from the center. There is some leeway to be able to have that money at the state level, but it's really, there's nothing about evaluation here. It's not about rocket science. It's about getting the timing and the sequence of events right. So we've had situations where the materials were not printed on time, teachers were not trained on time. 1 month left, kids are now getting sort of squeezed because here you're trying to do foundational, but there, the teachers are trying to complete the curriculum. Now, what do you do in this situation, right? So I think just understanding, planning, and getting the timing right, getting the sequence of events right, I think is really important, and that's what we've realized and it doesn't take an evaluation on RCT to tell you that. It's really, it's just deeper, understanding what are the behind the scenes of what's really happening, what's going on. The second piece I'll talk, and again, second, I think the micro piece of what we learned was building relationships right from the top to the bottom across all the key stakeholders. And I'm not talking about external, I'm talking about internal within the government. You need the top policy maker to be aligned with what the mission is, what the goal is, what you're trying to achieve. You've convinced them, you have an MOU, but what about the teacher on the ground? What about the middle layers? You have the block resource coordinators, the district officers, block officers. Everyone needs to be aligned on the same, and everything. Yes, you can run things in a mission mode, but ultimately you have to also integrate things back in the fabric of the system. How do you make them work? So, anecdotally, and I'll tell you a few things behind the scenes of what we learned when we were evaluating teaching at the right level. And at that time, it wasn't even called teaching at the right level. It was called different things in different states. Somebody calls it Odu Karnataka, somebody calls it Learning Enhancement Program, somebody calls it BEP. I mean, there are various, governments gave it different names, but I think one lesson we learned was to get alignment after you sign the MOU, you have to work. There are some key drivers, and that's actually what we unearthed in the evaluation. There are some key drivers and key levers that you need to have in place which will impact the change. It is the teachers, it is their mindsets, it is motivating them enough to be able to take that next step and reorient their minds to say, grouping by children is not a bad thing. The child who's sitting with class 3 child who cannot read, sitting with a class 5 child is absolutely okay. 1 or 2 hours a school day, build foundation, regroup them, keep moving them on. They have to understand that. They have to be able to integrate that into their thinking. And what we found, some simple practices that we found was that as the way that Pratham does this pedagogy, it's really very inclusive, and very fun materials, fun games. It's a playway method. Everybody is having a great time. Then what we learned and then teachers, for instance, are sitting on the floor with the children. It's not as if you're sitting, teachers are sitting on the desk and the kids are sitting on the floor. That's not happening in this. They're all sitting together. It's almost, different groups are working together with different goals in mind. the same teacher, when they go back to teaching some other subject, so you move away from teaching foundational literacy and numeracy in one way, they're going back to teaching, science or something else in their classrooms, even math. But math, which is grade level math, they're back in their bubble. They have forgotten all the innovative practices, or they've not forgotten, they've compartmentalized all the innovative practices, and they're not being able to transition those innovative practices to being able to do their regular teaching. So we saw some of that happening in some of the schools that we were in, and you could see very clearly that where it's breaking down because they're not being able to make that connection. Again, I'm talking from an external evaluator perspective. You'll have a lot more insights, I think, because you all work in implementation in schools. So how do you break that bubble? How do you integrate those two things to come together? That's, I think, that's important as you thinking about scaling, because it is about these, they're the frontline workers. You want to be able to make sure that the system is aligned right to the frontline worker who has to deliver the program, their beliefs, their perceptions, their mindsets. Everything is important as you're scaling up, right? It's not just one program, it's the people who make that and drive that program. The second level, for instance, we found was a key driver was the mentor. I'm not calling it the monitor, but the mentor for the teachers. Mentoring is very important. And what we found was that we have assistant block resource coordinators. They may be called different things in different states. The assistant block coordinators are one step above the teacher. So one ABRC will have about 15 schools, and however many teachers in those schools. They have typically been postmasters of information, and checking registers and taskmasters. They've never been mentors. So how do you align them to become mentors? And one thing I remember now, Rukmini insisting with government after government, where we were doing the evaluation, saying they will spend 30 days in school with children, teaching them. Massive rebellion. They were like, why are we going to go? We are going to monitor teachers. Why are we going to teach the teachers? Teach the children. We know all this stuff. We've probably done it, 20 years ago, but it's there in our blood. So Pratham insisted that ABRCs have to spend 1 month with children, teaching them in the same methodology, the teaching at the right level pedagogy. I could see this happening in front of me within the first day, second day, third day, skeptics. Fourth day, fifth day, they were coming with their results of their children to say, this child has moved from beginner to letter, this child has moved from letter to para, but this child is struggling and I'm not being able to move them. So, it was a way of getting their hands dirty, getting them involved to be able to then mentor teachers much better later on. And we found this as a key driver. And I think one of the key elements of the model, when we go is, whenever we speak about it or Pratham speaks about it, we always say that you need to have that layer to be able to mentor teachers, because teachers need that support. And we did a lot of process monitoring. So we did some qualitative studies. So apart from the RCT that was going on, the quantitative piece, we were also doing a lot of the qualitative work just behind the scenes to see process monitoring, inputs, outputs, how are they being delivered, our ABRCs visiting schools, and we found that in the schools where the program was there, the teachers really appreciated ABRCs coming in and supporting them, observing them. So I think we had about more than a 70% visit rate of APRCs, if I remember correctly, when we did the evaluation. So I think these are small things when you're thinking of scaling up that are really, really important to get right. Now, if I think of the macro pieces in terms of what have we learned as we are scaling up. So JPAL today, and I'll talk broadly beyond education, JPAL today has more than 1,000 evaluations that we've done across 11 sectors. So whether it's health, education, governance, climate, gender, skills, livelihoods. We found that, we've seen that over 500 million people so far have been impacted by the programs that have been scaled up. A lot of them have been scaled up in collaboration with governments. So that's the evidence there for you, Shailendra, is that governments can scale, they have scaled, impactful and sustained. And I can talk forever about different examples as well. But I think the important piece here is that 3 or 4 pieces that we've seen are really important. One is evidence. We need good evidence to be able to tell them what works, what doesn't work. And along with that, I think just institutionalizing evidence use within governments through long-term partnerships, embedding staff, embedded units. There are many ways of doing this. We've done that across the world, in India and in many countries across the world, where we've embedded people or we've embedded evidence units, where we are sort of having the government's ex-ante commit to evaluating before they're scaling up or rolling out a scheme. That's really important to get that understanding, and having, sort of creating all the champions, necessary champions within different departments, different levels. That's also really important. I think the third piece that we've seen is looking at insights. So it's not just the program that we've evaluated, but what are the insights coming from that program which are generalizable. So if you think about, the ABRC example I gave, or the teacher minds, these are generalizable examples, generalizable sort of things that we can take forward. The insights from grouping and teaching at the right level is a generalizable insight. So it's not just the program, but it's the insight that's equally important to take forward, and being able to have the sort of the necessary, data to support, the qualitative analysis to support is also equally important. And lastly, scaling up and scaling down go hand in hand. You want that commitment from governments to scale up based on, and then again, giving them blueprints. Scaling up will require blueprints. You will require some hand-holding, some manuals, some documentation. Might require technical partner in the initial years, but with the understanding that there is an exit at the end of that. And lastly, of course, scaling down because you find that doesn't have an impact. None results, we say, is good. None results are good because then you're not scaling something that is not effective.
Thank you very much. These are just seeing the difference between the micro and the macro, and and the linkages between them, and the importance of the interplay. I guess coming to my last question for Shailendra. We've sort of we've discussed innovations, research, practice, and various settings and contexts. What lessons do you think India has in terms of the use of evidence and the challenges it's faced for other countries or outside of India?
So India, if you were to talk about, there are multiple lessons. First of all, for ourselves to learn before we can say for anything else. And one of the things that I have noticed is that we have not been very clear ourselves as to what we mean by foundational literacy and numeracy. There has been conflicting law, policies and practices which was like at the cross purpose. I'll give you 3 examples. National Curriculum Framework 2005. When it was launched, there was like a complete romanticization of constructivism. And the way it was built was that there was the ability to read, write was like a passing reference. By the way, that can happen. I mean, why do we have to spend our glorious time in doing some lower order skills? That will happen. So we have to focus on the higher order things. So children should be creator, constructor of knowledge, and teachers would be facilitators of that. I don't think that was wrong. It's a very good idea, and that's what education is supposed to be. But just as we say that teaching at the right level, I think for the system also this is a lesson starting at the right level. One has to see where you are. You cannot suddenly put the baseline to a certain level where nobody understands. So what essentially happened was that on the basis of it, unrealistic, textbooks and documents started coming. And do this fact check. Look at class 3 textbook of NCERT, and you will find there is they call preface or something, where the authors are addressing to a student, and there is a line which says कि अब तो आप अपनी किताब पढ़ सकते हो. मतलब there is an assumption built into it that this child can read. And in the morning, Rukmini said that in grade 3, 25 to 30% children are the only one. So essentially you created something for 25-30% children, and on the whole basis then things started moving in that direction. That's number 1. Number 2, Right to Education Act. If you look at section 24, which prescribes the duties of a teacher, and I have like several of my colleagues from Delhi government here, section 24(1)(d) says that the teacher has to assess the children regularly and supplement instructions if required. Inherent in that is that teacher will be doing the fact check regularly and doing the supplementary support if the children, if basis on the basis of her own evidence, she is finding that children have not learned, do the supplementary thing. So you give something from the right hand, and then you take that thing away from your left hand, because the same section 24(1)(c) says the teacher is required to complete the entire curriculum in the stipulated time. Now ask any teacher that how on earth are you going to coordinate both the things in the same time, space and period with the same set of children? So basically what you did was you gave a very conflicting signal or message, and this is law. So the teacher can be held, disciplinary action can be taken if she doesn't complete. And correct me if I'm wrong, you all were required to give some kind of certificate that you have completed the syllabus. Hota hai, abhi bhi hota hai. So that is evidence. She has to produce an evidence. So that was number 2. Number 3, NAS, National Achievement Survey. Now when we know that 25, 30, I mean, look at grade 3. I was looking at 2017 NAS data. Now the way I understood the way the results are produced, it's like about 50 to 55%, on an average score was about 50 to 55%. I mean, the children on an average can answer 50 to 55% of the questions, right? That's your score. So you are basically 50%. So everywhere in India, we are a 50% nation. So it's 50%, you got that. Now, the question that somebody should ask, and where is the evidence of that, if you know that your 3/4 of the children in grade 3 cannot even read, administering a pen and paper test, where on the basis of that the child has marked. So the remaining children who cannot even read, how do you know that they have got their answers right or they could not read the question itself? But that is a policy. So in 2017 we did, and again in 2021 we did, and we are very proud of what we have done that. So what has happened is that in the light of all these conflicting things, the poor teacher has to figure out how she has to organize her own space. So she will create her own evidence and work on that. So I think what learning from the experience in Delhi government, what we have done, and that is where Mission Bunyad again comes into, is first set the goal very clearly. Like we started saying that, okay, we are not talking about anything. Can we ensure that all children in our grade 3 to 9 read a paragraph from their textbook? Can we do that? Yes or no? That is the goal. Can we get all our children to do simple division? I mean, higher learning goals can be achieved. We can do that. But can we at this point in time ensure that? And that is what we went ahead. And we created process for that. And we were looking at the end of these things, we found that nearly 48% children in grade 3 to 5 can now read a grade 2 level text. But the more encouraging part is that the 40% children apart from this are the ones who are just a step below. So therefore, the next strategy that we have to adopt is to basically work on the fluency of the children. And that is the kind of thing we are seeing in 6 to 9 also. So having those numbers in place, that here are these children who are at this level. So probably the kind of strategy that you adopt when a lot of children cannot even read a sentence or cannot even recognize a word, you have to change that strategy. And what could be that strategy? That is what we started talking to the teachers about. Now here is a child who can read, but there is an issue with fluency. Because from grade 6 to 9, the kind of text this child has to deal with have a lot of unfamiliar words. You have to read your social science, you have to read your science. So how do you build fluency when you have to deal with unfamiliar words? So there are strategies in place that needs to be followed. And what we agreed upon was that from July until end of August, we will work very closely on building the fluency of children, because that is where we are. And in order to do that, what we have also taken a decision, and we will have like lot of repercussions or reactions coming from different segments, but I think that's what governments are supposed to be ready for that. We have said we are reducing syllabus by 50%. Only 50% of the syllabus of that class, because we also have a situation where the child has like double or triple promotion. So a child who is in class 9 is jumping to class 9 from 7th. So you just barely went to 7th when all this lockdown started. So you have like 2 classes you have left behind. So if you were to teach the concept of that particular class, how are you going to connect with the previous class? So the way we have designed is that the children who can read their textbook fluently, we will go with 50% syllabus, and the remaining time is going to be used to connect with the syllabus, as Rishi you were describing, connecting with the previous classes, because otherwise we will have a different crisis emerging in a short period of time. And the ones who need fluency support, for the next 2 months we will be focusing with them, and for them we will decide what amount of syllabus of their particular class we will be using, but the strategy would remain the same. So I think one of the lessons that we, after repeated trial and errors in Delhi government, we have done is to keep communicating about these. And I would also say that simply communicating that here is a crisis and we have to focus on that may not be enough. Because we also see on many occasions, like when we were having a review with the school principals, many of them would come and say, no, we have to focus on children who cannot even identify letters or cannot even read the words. And we said, look at your data. You hardly have 8 to 10% children left in that. And if a child in 7th or 8th is still struggling, then there may be some other reason for that. Go and look at those reasons rather than saying that we are going to focus on that. You have to invest your energy on nearly 50% who are at the gate knocking to get inside. If you support them, probably you will have a very massive turnaround that will happen. So I think these are some of the lessons that we have learned for ourselves. And we are very encouraged that new National Education Policy 2020 was the first public document, which very emphatically said what foundational literacy is. And it very clearly, when it says that it is an urgent and necessary prerequisite of learning, I don't think there is any other document in India which says this thing so unequivocally. Otherwise, if you look at, and my biggest worry is that now there are several working groups at NCERT and all thrashing out the curriculum framework. And I'm keeping my finger crossed. We are hoping that in order to simplify this, they should not further complicate it. Because the message has to be very clear that when you want foundational literacy and numeracy, make sure that the child can read a paragraph from the textbook, period. After that, you are opening the entire horizon for that child. But don't complicate that process. And it is not rocket science. It can happen if you give a very clear instruction, focus, and have patience on that. Otherwise, again, 5 years down the line, we will again be redefining the whole things with much, and the generation of children would have passed. So I think we are there, but not yet there. So we have a lot of ground to cover. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists for giving your insights, perspectives, but also optimism and hope going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I think that was quite an invigorating and enriching discussion. And may I now invite Rachel for concluding remarks and thanks, please.
Wow. What a final panel. And thank you very much, Terry. Thank you, panelists. I think you're often asked who would be your dream dinner party guest, and I think for many of us in the room, you just represent the dream dinner party guest. Perhaps, add in Rukmini and Renu Singh and others, and it would be perfect. So a good teacher inspires, and a good teacher listens, and a good teacher usually lets people go home early. So we have a final task. I'd first like to know how many of you have connectivity in this room. Are you the 50%, or let's see a show of hands? How many of you are connected? Because you have one final piece of homework. Rukmini, are you really not connected? Good. Okay, so on the screen, you should be soon seeing a link, which is the link for the evaluation of the day. And while I make a few closing thanks, we would really appreciate if you could go on the link that's also been emailed to you, because British Council are incredibly efficient. So instead of having to type the link, you can go onto your email and open the link. But if you could access that and put in your concluding thoughts while I give thanks, that would be really appreciated. Sadly, the Joint Secretary actually can't come and do the final vote, but happily, she is looking at the curriculum issues as we speak. So hopefully all of the wise words of our last panel will be heeded and taken on board. Additional Secretary, that is. But we do have to thank the Joint Secretary who came earlier today and inspired us all, and indeed Rukmini for her panel as well this morning. And one of the things I love about being in India is that you're going to get outspoken people who speak with passion and who challenge each and every one of us. And thank you, Rukmini, for challenging me on the framework that I put up with the missing pillar in that. You'll be pleased to know I will duly go away and make revisions. So we were challenged today. We were challenged to conduct new research. We were challenged to think about teaching at the right level. We were challenged to think about the curricula. And this morning, there was a call making reflections on the Young Lives longitudinal research for more longitudinal research. And it's been just an incredible, rich debate, and I wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming and taking your time. And it's really very unusual to have in one room the policymakers and the academics and the donors and the civil society representatives all debating and discussing together in such an open way. And the couple of breakout groups I was in, it was genuinely a very informed and open and challenging discussion, and what great facilitators. So I'd also like to say thanks to all the facilitators. So before I give thanks, it would be great if there's 2 or 3 of you who'd just like to give in 3 words your reflections of the day. So while you're thinking of that, we've got on the next slide, I just want us all to look at who is in the panel. And we didn't mention this at the start, but if you look at the panel members, you'll see that this is a globally selected panel, and you'll see that India is hugely overrepresented here. And I think you should be incredibly proud to have 3 of the panelists from India, and I think that deserves a round of applause to you all, from you all, because I think that represents decades, actually, of research that's been led and inspired by Indian academics and civil society, and it's a great achievement. So would anybody from the audience like to give 3 words of reflections from the day while you fill in your evaluation forms? Are there any volunteers from the floor? Can I see any? Yes, please. 3 words. Sorry, we'll just wait for the mic a moment.
Respected presence, the 3 words that I would like to append to this elite gathering: inspiration, perspiration, and with that, determination. Obviously, sir, respected presence, the thing that we gathered from here, and my takeaway would be, I would inspire myself from the words of wisdom that I had over here. I shall start perspiring even more in all the constructive and the positive ways. And finally, my goal I shall reach with all the determination that I shall have. Thank you, sir. This is Mana Yadav from Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Indore. And may I also, with the words of wisdom of my dad, it's nice to chance you here. It's really nice to chance you here. How lovely, exquisite, and fair. May noble ideas and thoughts flourish into us. We value their presence without malice and fuss. But, no buts to say. So long to go, so little went, so little time together had we spent. We seek to have more of your blessings and guidance. Thank you, sir. Thank you, respected presence. Please.
I think that deserves a round of applause. Great. I see a couple more hands, please.
4 words instead of 3. So what really stood out for me in terms of, there is a lot of coherence in the vision that we have in this group today. So for me, strong partnerships and working together is what critically stands out, and I think together we can make that difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, if there's no more hands, it now gives me great pleasure to actually thank all the people who are behind an event like this. I think we all know how challenging it is to get this many people with such busy agendas together and dedicating a whole day to debate and discussion. So I'd like to thank, first of all, the conveners, the joint conveners of the JEEP, so that's the World Bank and UNICEF, and our EDT colleagues who aren't here but have done lots of hard work remotely, Vicky Collis in particular. And from the council, Barbara, who couldn't be here but has been very much behind all of the organisation. And then those who are here, it would be lovely to invite up, our British Council colleagues. Just we have a small little thank you for them. So Ritika and Anu and Pinel and so on. If you could come down, and your team, if you could come up and just receive a thank you and round of applause, please. Okay. Ritika, do you mind? I don't know which is which. But
Thank you so much. Sorry.
It's been a... Thank you. Thank you very much. So, thank you all for your hard work, and now it's time for us all to go and enjoy drinks, courtesy of the British Council, and thank you for such a wonderful venue for us to meet in and enjoy, and we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.